Okay guys, I'm back. I'm about to remove the pressure plate. I've already loosened off the bolts. I believe there's 6 of them, and I've loosened them off in a X pattern again, and the pressure plate should be off in just a moment. So they're the 6 bolts. Already got one out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're around the 13 mil. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Take them off in an X pattern, and basically that will just come away. When I'm ready, I'll get them all out. When I'm ready to pull it off, I'll come back. Okay, all 6 bolts are out now. Of course, it's a little bit stuck. Might need a little bit of a prizing off, but it should come away. So there it goes with a bit of a pull, and the friction plate comes off with it. And what do we have on the friction plate? Ooh, okay. Well, don't know if you can see that in shot, but okay, so it's in reasonable condition. Certainly not damaged at all. A little bit worn, so I'll have a suss of that. And so a little bit worn. You can sort of see here that even in some spots, some of those marks are down, literally ground off. This side's actually pretty good. This side's pretty good, but the side that touches the friction plate is not so good. So there's nothing immediate that stands out with the flywheel, which is really cool. It's actually not very lumpy at all. It's actually pretty clean, to be honest. Very, very slight wave. I mean, virtually nothing. It's actually pretty good by the look of it. I'm really pleased with that, because these are like 2,000 Australian dollars. They're worth a fortune. Well, probably about 1,800 or something like that, to be honest, Australian. Okay, so the next step is to remove these bolts here and remove the flywheel. I'm not sure if I'll have to remove the flywheel position indicator. It's up here. Not sure if I have to remove that or not. Possibly not, because it'll tilt. It'll be able to tilt back and then come down. But I mean, it's no big deal. 2 simple little bolts, and then I can get to this sucker here, which is, you know, this main body here, which is actually what this job has been all along. Anyhow, I'll start loosening off these bolts. You have to get on the other side and put a 36 mil socket onto the crank on the other side and somehow stop it from moving, brace it up so you're able to get these off. These are going to have a fair bit of torque to them, so big long extensions so you can really get outside the wheel arch and get them off. But anyhow, I will loosen these off and get back to you. Okay guys, I've loosened off. They're 17 mil, these suckers here. I've loosened them off, X pattern once again, and I've also marked, you can see I've marked the flywheel. I actually marked that at where it was right on the pointer, and it's moved that little bit when I first started to undo these. Of course, you have to lock the crank. Now this is the sort of extension you need, this sort of thing, to get in here, clear the wheel arch. Yeah, okay, clear the wheel arch and be able to really get up and onto onto your breaker bar. I'll just quickly show you the other side what I did, and there you can see I've locked it up, and lots of rags and foam down here just to protect my tool, because to be truthfully honest, I had to use my really big torque wrench to do this, and I really don't like using torque wrenches and stuff for this kind of thing. Yeah, so frown at me if you choose, I don't blame you, but I really didn't have anything else, so it's what I had to do. Anyhow, I'm going to remove the nuts from, or should I say the bolts from the flywheel, and put them all back in. Should I say remove the flywheel and put all the bolts back in a little container that I have here, is what I meant to say. Okay, so I'll do that, and when I bring the flywheel off, we'll have a good inspect of that. Cheers. Okay guys, as you can see, most of them are out. I've loosened off, I loosened them all off by hand, and then once I freed them all up by about, you know, a quarter of an inch or so, I used my air ratchet gun and removed them off. But I left this one on here because I'm going to do this last one by hand. So I don't want the flywheel to just drop out. I want to try and get it on film, so I'm working with the camera right next to me. I don't think it's just going to fall. It doesn't feel like it will. I think that up there is holding it in. Yeah. So I'm going to try and pivot it out, see if it's possible, get it out from under that. Otherwise I'm going to have to take that off. I possibly will have to take it off. Nope. Okay, that's what I figured. Alright, and there's the next job. So these bolts through here, which is attaching it onto the block, sealing in the oil. Looks like a bit of oil there, so it looks like there is a mild rear main. Wow, I'm not sure, you know, like, is that bearing supposed to be sitting proud like that, and thus sitting slightly, if you can see that, sitting slightly in there. I'm replacing that pilot bearing anyway. I'll probably remove it while it's in, while the sandwich plate is still there, just so I've got something to brace my puller on. I've got a special puller that should do that job, I hope. But anyhow, clearly there's a, you know, you can see down here, you know, there's oil down there. So clearly there was a rear main leak, probably from somewhere here, possibly. But yeah, I'm going to research this a little bit more, because, you know, is that, I would have thought, maybe I'm wrong, you know, I don't really know. Maybe it has gone home all the way, maybe that's as far in as it goes. But I'm just making quite a note on that. Might try and zoom into that a little bit, just to show that that's proud of what looks to be that brass ring around it. So So it was sitting, I'm trying to get it in shot, where are we? So you can see on the flywheel, that bearing, heavy flywheel, that bearing was sitting there. You can see that clean spot, that's how far out the bearing was sitting. But anyway, flywheel's off. It actually looks pretty damn good. I don't think this car's had a lot of grief in its life. I certainly haven't had any grief with it. Or given it any grief, I should say. Not anything really hard, not anything a Ferrari can't handle. But at the same time, I certainly haven't been driving around like I'm competing in the Milli Miglia. Anyway, all right, I will get back to you when I start to go pull this pilot bearing out and give you an update to what this thing is like, because I'll look for cracks and so on. Cheers. Hey guys, well, I've taken the flywheel off as you saw and had a look at it. It looks pretty good when I first took it off. Of course, you know, there's always details. I mean, it's pretty good. I did find once I cleaned it off, and as you can see, I've only cleaned it off, you know, a bit. I didn't go to town on it as such. I just put some 180, then some 400 grit paper on it and cleaned it up, and it feels pretty good. I mean, it didn't have a lot of high spots anyway when I took it off the car. Nothing screams at me. However, I mean, it could possibly be 35-year-old flywheel, so I'm not going to get it machined. I think it's pretty good, and I'm not recommending that for you. If you want to get your flywheel machined, you go for it. Ideally, that's probably the better thing to do. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. However, I will point out a couple of things. I did find some very, very minor cracking. It's so small, it's hard for me to pick it up on the camera, but there's a tiny little crack there. Okay, and there was another one, wasn't that far away from that one, and another tiny one. I think that was it there. I mean, they're so small, otherwise it's in pretty good condition. Daily driver and driving it hard, I would probably either get this shimmed, and if those cracks didn't go, they were deeper, I would replace it. Like I said, they're about between 1,500 and 2,000 Australian dollars, and then you've got to ship them as well, and they're pretty heavy. So based on, I do about 3,500 kilometres a year in my car, and I don't drive it. I mean, I don't smash the clutch, I just don't. I'm a driving instructor by trade, so I certainly know how to drive a car easily, or should I say gently. Yeah, I'm going to put it back on as it is. That's my decision. I'm not necessarily recommending that's the decision you make. You have to determine that based on your particular car, your particular engine. I think it's fine. It's not going to get a lot of grief anyway, and it's going to have a new friction plate up against it pretty soon, because there's no doubt I shall get a new friction plate. As far as the pressure plate goes, I want to have a really good look at the pressure plate. It is ideal to replace it, and once again, I don't recommend that you don't replace yours, but you don't always have to replace your pressure plate. This one looks fairly old, but I really don't know, so I'm going to have a good look at it, and once again, based on what the amount of Ks I do, I'm not sure if it's necessary to replace. I will just suss that out and get back to you when I've made a final decision on that one. Anyhow, flywheel's basically ready to go back on once I get the rest done. So now it's down to that pilot bearing from in the middle. Alright, see you soon. Okay guys, just very quick, pulling out the pilot bearing. using a pilot bearing puller. It's coming out. Bit of a pain in the backside, but it's coming out. Next step will be to start looking at taking off the actual sandwich plate. Cheers. Okay, there he is. Got him out using a pilot bearing puller. It's cost me about $50 a couple of years ago. First time I've used it, but I'll tell you one thing, it's worth buying a tool like that. You lend it out to your mates. You can also, you know, you're going to use it again sooner or later on something. I just put these little bits of wood that I had offcuts from my handle to take off the crank. To take off the bell housing. So I just used a couple of those just here just to protect it. Now looking at it, there's no doubt there's a lip in there, and there's no doubt that that's it does sit proud. You can see there, it's not going to house the whole bearing. It's going to sit proud. So you just need to send it home, and it will sit a little bit proud. If I can put that in shot, you can see there the different colour on the bearing, which side sits out, which side sits in. So it sits in that side just a little bit deeper than what it sits out. So it's a good guide anyway to find out, to make sure. I had to grind down my puller a little bit. These bits here, I had to grind them down a little bit to get them inside this bearing, just with a hand file, but it worked, and this bearing puller worked really well once I worked out how to use it. Anyway, next step. See you soon. Okay, there's a number of things I'm going to have to undo or remove off the sandwich plate. For starters, there's that bracket right there. I need to undo that. I also need to undo the slave cylinder. If I can get my finger in shot. Don't know where the heck it is. There it is. So just there. Couple of bolts going through that way, and also make sure that I really hook this up properly so it really doesn't pop out or anything. Okay, there is a bolt under there as well that's connected to. There's a sensor just there. I believe that one's for the rev counter. I believe I replaced that one a long time ago. This one here, not sure what it is. That one, sorry. Not sure exactly what sensor that's for, but it's definitely to do with the flywheel. So I need to unplug that from there. The blue one is the top one, and the white one is the bottom one, but I mark them up. Anyway, call that number sensor 2. And there's a little sender unit just in there, which is hooked to the body, so that should be just a matter of undoing that, pulling that plug off it, and then behind it, if you can see just there's a nut hiding behind there, so it's that one. There is a sensor on this side, but I've already disconnected it. It runs through, ouch, runs through and is just there. You can see where my finger is, it's just there. So it's that one there, that one there, but I've disconnected that one. So I could actually probably feed that through, just so I know where it is. So it's not going to get caught. You could take them out, but they're a bit of a pain in the bum. If I can avoid taking it out, I will, and I should be able to move the whole unit this way and out. So it's not very wide. It's sandwiched between the crank and, should I say, the block and the bell housing. So it's not very wide. So I'm not going to bother taking this out until I've got it off the car, because there's no point. I'm removing this, so I'm going to take this out, so I'll be able to take it out and put it in with a lot of ease. I'll do that while it's out of the car, I presume. So like I was saying, bolt at the bottom here, bolt hiding behind there. And I can't see any others going around the top. There's an oil breather there. Looks like, well actually no, it's not a breather, it looks like a return from from bottom of that rear head. So undo that one there. So a couple of things to undo, but nothing too serious. And then it's these guys here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm assuming. Not pulled one of these off before, so learning as I go. That's why it's good to use diagrams. Okay. I shall get all those ancillaries off and get to the point where I'm starting to undo these nuts and get back to you.